My best friend begged me to babysit her kids. Now she's telling everyone I'm a terrible mother because I caught her cheating with my husband. I'm a 29-year-old woman named Emma, and I never imagined that trusting my best friend would cost me everything. Sophie and I have been inseparable since college. We lived together, shared secrets, and promised to always have each other's backs. When she had her twins 2 years ago, I was the first person she called to help, especially since her husband's job kept him traveling most of the time. She begged me to babysit regularly, said she trusted me more than anyone else. I was honored. I loved those kids like my own. But then things started to feel off. One afternoon, I picked Sophie up from work because her car was in the shop. When we got home, I noticed her phone kept buzzing nonstop, texts from an unknown number she quickly hid. Later that night, I overheard whispered phone calls in her room, hushed and tense. I didn't want to pry, but my gut screamed something was wrong. Then, one evening, I came home early from work. I wanted to surprise Sophie with dinner. What I saw shattered my world. Her husband, Mark, was there. But so was another woman. Not just any woman, the woman was me. They were kissing in the kitchen. Laughing like secrets didn't weigh them down. I froze. Sophie caught me staring, eyes wide with panic. I confronted her. But instead of apology, she laughed and said, "You think I'm the bad guy? Look in the mirror, Emma." And that's when the nightmare started. Because Sophie didn't stop cheating, she made sure everyone believed I was the terrible mother, the neglectful friend, the jealous villain trying to ruin her life. And now, I'm left fighting not only for my dignity but for the children I loved like my own. After that night, everything spiraled. Sophie didn't deny what I saw. Instead, she flipped the script. She told Mark I was unstable, jealous, and trying to sabotage their marriage because I was threatened by their success. She told mutual friends I was careless with her children, that I showed up late or distracted when babysitting. Even some of my own family started to question me. I was shattered. Not just by the betrayal but by the way she weaponized people's trust against me. I had given Sophie everything, my time, my love, my trust, and she twisted it into poison. Mark cut contact with me. He said he needed space to figure things out. But I caught Sophie texting him late at night, sending pictures of herself in their bed. I even found a key to my own apartment in her purse. She'd been sneaking in when I wasn't home. I started doubting myself. Was I really a bad mother? Was I really losing control? But one night, I found a message she accidentally left open on her phone. It wasn't from Mark. It was from my husband. The man I trusted with my life. He called her my favorite escape and said he couldn't wait to see her again. That was the last straw. I packed my bags, changed the locks, and cut all ties. But Sophie didn't let me go quietly. She went on a campaign to destroy me, spreading lies, turning friends against me, even calling child services to check on the twins' safety after a minor allergy scare I handled perfectly. I was drowning. But I'm still here. And I'm going to fight back. I still remember the day everything fell apart like it was yesterday, though months have passed since that nightmare started unraveling. I want to warn anyone who'll listen, sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who will betray you in the cruelest ways. Sophie was my best friend. Or at least, she seemed like it. After the incident, I was a mess. Emotionally shattered, barely holding it together for my own kids and for the twins I was watching. I spent nights scrolling through conversations on my phone, trying to find answers, some kind of explanation for what had happened, but there was nothing. Only silence, lies, and the cold realization that Sophie had built a secret life behind my back. When I confronted Mark about what I'd found, the texts, the pictures, the lies, he didn't deny it. Instead, he looked at me like I was a stranger. Like I was the one who had done something wrong. He said he loved Sophie, said she made him feel alive in ways I never could. I was stunned. The man I thought was my partner was willing to toss me aside like garbage. But Sophie was worse. She turned the entire circle of friends and family against me. She told anyone who'd listen that I was an unreliable mother, that I neglected the twins, that I was jealous and paranoid. Some of my closest friends stopped calling. I was isolated, alone, and bleeding on the inside. Worse, she used the kids against me. Whispered that I wasn't capable, that they deserved better. The worst moment came when I found out she'd gone to child services. I had spent years building a home for my children, a safe, loving place. One minor allergy attack and a doctor's appointment later, she twisted it into a claim that I was negligent. The social worker visited my home unannounced. I answered questions, showed medical records, and prayed they'd see the truth. I was scared they'd take the twins away from Sophie, too. That somehow the whole mess would spiral even further. But I stood my ground. I fought. I didn't just fight for my reputation, I fought for my children's future. The nights after were long and lonely. I hardly slept. I stopped answering my phone. I was exhausted, but I refused to give up. One night, when the house was quiet and the kids asleep, I sat down and began writing. Not a letter, but a full journal. Every lie Sophie told. Every text. Every moment I could remember. I wanted to hold on to my truth, to remind myself that I was still here, still fighting, still real. And then came the shocker. I found out that Sophie had been sneaking into my apartment when I wasn't home. A key she'd somehow gotten, I still don't know how. She was using it to steal my things, rearrange furniture, leave little messages to unnerve me. Once, she left one of my children's favorite toys broken on the floor. Like a cruel game. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. At some point, I realized that this wasn't just about cheating or broken trust anymore. It was a war, one I didn't sign up for, but had no choice but to fight. So I decided to act. I gathered everything, the texts, the photos, the proof of her lies, and I hired a lawyer. The plan wasn't to get revenge or ruin Sophie's life. It was to protect my children, my family, and myself from further harm. I filed for full custody of the twins, citing emotional manipulation, instability, and Sophie's proven attempts to undermine me. It was the hardest decision I've ever made, but I knew it was necessary. The court hearings were brutal. Sophie cried on the stand, claiming I was trying to steal her kids out of spite. She called me paranoid and unstable. But when I presented the evidence, the text messages between her and Mark, the proof of her sneaking in and sabotaging me, the judge saw through the lies. I was granted primary custody. Sophie was ordered to attend therapy and parenting classes, with supervised visits. It felt like a small victory, but one I celebrated alone. The friends I thought would stand by me had largely disappeared. Some avoided me in public. Others whispered behind my back, taking Sophie's side. But my children mattered more than anyone's opinion. I focused on them, on healing, on rebuilding what had been shattered. Slowly, I found my strength again. And while the scars remain, deep and raw, I know I survived something that could have broken me. I'm still learning to trust. Still learning to love. Still learning to believe in myself. But I'm here. And that's enough for now. After the court case, life didn't magically get better. If anything, the fallout made me realize how deeply Sophie had poisoned everything around her, and how much work I had ahead of me just to reclaim my own life. The social circle we shared fractured. Some people took my side quietly, but most didn't want to get involved. Sophie had spun a convincing narrative. I was the jealous, unstable friend who couldn't handle her success or her happiness. The irony was brutal. She was the one cheating behind my back, but I was the one being painted as the villain. I lost friends. Invitations stopped coming. I got cold shoulders at places I used to feel safe. The loneliness was crushing. But I focused on the kids. I became fiercely protective, especially with the twins. They deserved more than to be caught in the middle of this mess. Every day, I tried to create a bubble of normalcy, story time, baths, bedtime rituals, something to hold on to when the outside world felt like it was closing in. Therapy became a lifeline. It helped me untangle the web of betrayal, guilt, and self-doubt. I learned to separate Sophie's lies from my reality. To remind myself that I was not the bad mother she accused me of being. The most painful part was realizing how much Sophie had undermined my relationship with Mark. He and I barely spoke after everything. I moved out to clear my head and protect my kids from the toxicity. He tried reaching out a few times, but I kept my distance. Trust wasn't something you rebuilt with empty promises and broken phones. Meanwhile, Sophie was still weaving her web. I heard through the grapevine that she was telling people I was unfit, that I abandoned the kids, that I was jealous of her life and trying to sabotage her family. None of it was true. But people believe what they want to believe. And the louder the lie, the harder it is to break through. One day, I got a call from the daycare. Apparently, someone had called with concerns about my fitness as a mother. I won't lie, that call shook me. I thought about how much Sophie must have pushed that narrative. How many people she'd poisoned against me. But I stayed strong. I gathered my medical records, my work schedule, testimonials from teachers and friends, anything to prove I was the mother my children deserved. And slowly, the truth began to shine through. It wasn't easy. It still isn't. But I'm still fighting. For my kids. For myself. For the future I refuse to let Sophie steal from me. I don't know how this ends. I don't even know if Sophie realizes what she's done. But I do know one thing. No betrayal can break a mother's love. And no lie can silence a truth as loud as that. The more time passed, the more I realized that Sophie wasn't just trying to destroy me, she was trying to erase me. Friends I thought I could trust started avoiding me. Some stopped returning my calls altogether. Invitations to gatherings that once felt like safe spaces disappeared. It was like I no longer existed. I felt like I was drowning, not just in betrayal, but in loneliness. But then, slowly, a few people began to see through her lies. One of Sophie's co-workers reached out, privately, telling me things I never expected to hear, how Sophie had been complaining about me behind my back, how she admitted to cheating on Mark for months, and how she was always careful to keep her story straight when talking to others. That small glimpse of truth gave me a lifeline. I reconnected with a few old friends who never bought Sophie's version of events. Their support was quiet but unwavering. They reminded me who I was before the betrayal, someone strong, loving, and worthy. I also started attending support groups for people who had been betrayed by close friends or partners. Hearing other stories made me realize I wasn't alone. The pain, the confusion, the heartbreak, they were real and valid, but so was healing. Meanwhile, my relationship with my own children grew stronger. Every bedtime story, every scraped knee I kissed, every laugh we shared reminded me of what mattered most. They were my anchor in the storm. Sophie, for her part, continued her campaign. Rumors, half-truths, and slander spread. But I refused to engage. I focused on rebuilding my life, one day at a time. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from a woman I'd never met, a therapist who specialized in trauma from betrayal. She'd been referred to me by a mutual friend. We spoke for hours that first session. For the first time in months, I felt heard. Understood. Not judged. Therapy became my refuge. It helped me untangle the knots of guilt and anger. It taught me to set boundaries. To rebuild trust, first in myself, then in others. Most importantly, it showed me that healing isn't linear. Some days, I feel whole. Other days, the pain still cuts deep. But every day, I'm learning to live again. And that's something Sophie will never take from me. A few months into therapy, I started feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It was subtle at first, a tiny spark during a session, a smile when my kids said something funny, a peaceful moment in the middle of the night instead of a panic attack. I realized I was reclaiming my life, piece by piece. One of the hardest moments came when I confronted my husband alone. We met at a coffee shop, neutral ground. I didn't want to yell. I didn't want to beg. I just wanted honesty. I told him everything I'd found: Sophie's texts, the nights she snuck into my apartment, the lies, the betrayal. He looked tired. Worn down. I never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. I was lost. I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know what to say. There was no simple forgiveness, no easy closure. Just two people broken by choices. We decided to separate. He moved out. And for the first time in years, I felt a breath of freedom. But Sophie wasn't done. She kept trying to contact me, to pull me back into her drama. I blocked her number, changed my passwords, tightened my circle. I had to protect my children, my heart, my future. And slowly, I rebuilt. Friends came back. New friendships formed. I rediscovered parts of myself I thought I'd lost. Motherhood became my strength, not my weakness. And through it all, I kept one thing close, the truth. No matter how dark the night, truth is the light that guides you home. Rebuilding after betrayal is like learning to walk again on broken bones, every step painful, uncertain, but necessary. Months after separating from Mark and cutting Sophie out, I found myself in a place I never imagined, slowly, painfully, reclaiming my life. Therapy became more than a refuge, it was a place of transformation. Sessions peeled back layers of guilt and self-doubt I didn't know I carried. My therapist helped me understand the difference between responsibility and blame, that I was never responsible for someone else's choices, no matter how much I loved them. I also started journaling daily. Writing helped me order the chaos in my mind, to confront the ugly truths and celebrate small victories. The first time I wrote, "I am enough," felt like shouting into the void. But I repeated it every morning after that. The kids, both mine and Sophie's twins, became my center. Caring for them wasn't always easy, especially under the shadow of all that had happened. But watching their laughter, their little quirks, their resilience, reminded me that love still exists beyond betrayal. Meanwhile, the fallout from the betrayal continued. Sophie didn't disappear quietly. She kept spinning stories, whispering poison into ears I once trusted. I heard rumors from mutual acquaintances, whispers that I was bitter, unstable, even neglectful. It stung. Especially when I saw some old friends fall for it, drifting away like leaves in the wind. But I refused to engage. Instead, I focused on rebuilding trust with those who stayed, family members who reached out, old friends who stood by me when it counted. I learned who my real allies were. One of the hardest parts was facing myself in the mirror. For a long time, I blamed myself, wondered if I'd missed signs, if I'd been naive, if I was simply unlucky. But healing taught me to replace that blame with compassion. To accept my imperfections and acknowledge my strength. I even started dating again, tentatively. After years of betrayal, the thought of opening my heart terrified me. But meeting new people who valued honesty and respect reminded me that love can be different, that it can be safe. In quiet moments, I sometimes think about Sophie. Not with hate, but with sadness. Sadness for the friendship lost, for the trust broken beyond repair, sadness that she chose a path that led us to ruin. But mostly, I feel proud. Proud that I survived. Proud that I didn't let betrayal define me. Proud that I'm building a new life, one rooted in truth, love, and self-respect. And if there's one thing I want anyone listening to know, it's this: you are not alone. You are not broken. And no matter how dark it gets, there is always a way back to the light. I'm still walking that path. Slowly. But with my head held high. Because after all this, I deserve nothing less. It's been almost a year since I finally closed the door on that chapter of my life, the year Sophie's lies almost broke me and the year I found myself again. Looking back, I see now that healing is not a straight line. Some days are harder than others. Sometimes, the pain catches me off guard, like a song, a scent, or a passing thought that brings it rushing back. But those moments don't control me anymore. They remind me of what I've overcome. My relationship with my kids is stronger than ever. They don't carry the weight of the past, they know only love, stability, and the fierce protection I vow to give them every day. Watching them grow, laugh, and trust again has been the greatest gift after so much loss. I've rebuilt friendships and made new ones, surrounded myself with people who value honesty and kindness. I learned to recognize the difference between toxic loyalty and genuine support. And I'm learning to forgive, not to forget, but to free myself from bitterness. As for Sophie and Mark, they're out of my life completely. I don't know if they ever faced the consequences of their choices beyond the legal battles and social fallout. I don't care. Their story isn't mine anymore. The biggest lesson I've learned is this: betrayal cuts deep, but it doesn't have to define you. You can survive the darkest moments, reclaim your worth, and rebuild your life on your own terms. If I could say one thing to anyone listening, it's this: trust your gut. Protect your heart. And never let anyone convince you that your pain is your fault. Because you deserve better. And so do I. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'm ready for it. Stronger. Wiser. And finally, free.
Follow me for more stories.